So excited tonight. I'm saying tonight because it's a little bit after midnight in Central Time. Two night owls are getting a chance to kind of talk movies for a little while. Chris Stachiw of Weirding Way Media and the Kulturecast and many other things which we'll get into here shortly is joining us. And I like to think of him as maybe the Roger Corman or the Lloyd Kaufman of the podcasting scene. This guy, as we'll learn over the next hour and a half, has an incredible amount of just simple, just like hours recorded of podcasts, most of them about movies. He's a man of culture. We spent an hour and I don't even know, hour and a half talking politics before we hit record.
Yeah, and this is already late. It's like you said, it's like let's fucking. Look, here's the thing. What's really funny is I was recording with Ryan Verrill, who we recorded an episode of the show that him and I do, and you were on there. And then you had emailed me and were like, "Hey, I need somebody like in short notice." And then I messaged you tonight and was like, "Well, if I'm up late and you're up late," and the fact that you said yes, you've jumped like 6 notches in my book because there are not a lot of people that I know that would record this late.
Let's go, right?
Yeah, I'm here for it. I am here for it 100%. I never miss an opportunity to do something spontaneous, and recording an episode of a show that I've never been on at, like you said, after midnight is after midnight. And this is, even though technically it's a different day, I had recorded 2 episodes before this. So I've been working since 7:45.
Well, by a long way of intro, Chris Stachiw, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me on such short notice too. That's the best part. I mean, because when I told Ryan, he was like, "What are you even talking about?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm assuming probably about me and the things that I've worked on," which I was joking with you before the recording. Like, I don't like talking about myself. It's like for real. And I don't get a chance to. It's not one of those like, I'm getting to talk about my favorite subject, me. It's like, no, not my favorite subject. And it makes me uncomfortable. Like, I don't know why. I wish more people would sing my praises. You just did. So thank you.
Of course. So there's this whole idea of just jumping on. I was watching a commentary, Jodorowsky, he does all of his own commentaries, right? So any Jodorowsky movies, like him talking, right? And when he was talking about, I think it was Santa Sangre, although it might have been a different one. He had told this story about, he was like a young buck. He's from like Chile, I believe, somewhere in South America. And he went to France and he was so excited because he was going to go hang out with the surrealists.
Right, so Mobius.
Right, yeah, he was like hanging out with these like the surrealists that like he grew up with. And he went and he had an idea at like 3 a.m. and he called. It was either Dali or Buñuel, and they were asleep. And he was like, "What the fuck are you doing asleep? You're a surrealist. It's like your brain should be on all the time. You should just be like your life is art." Anyways, so
I agree with that. I will even say, and this is an interesting tangent to go down. And if I ever become a stand-up comedian, this is now going to be part of my bit. So as someone a millennial who struggles with their mental health, I think I just said millennial twice for anybody listening. As someone who struggles with mental health and has just now been taking steps clinically to deal with it, read that as he's taking meds. You have to go to the doctor to talk to them to get said meds, because unless somebody knows a doctor who will write scripts over the phone, I guess that is a thing, but I don't want to do teledoc. I go bother someone in my own community. So I went to my doctor and I told him, I was like, "Look, I don't know what my deal is, but I could wake up at 6 a.m. and go to bed at 4:00 at night. And you'd have to I'm forcing myself to go to bed at 4 a.m. Yeah. Last night I went to bed at 5 a.m, woke up at 9, didn't go back to sleep again. Like, and I don't know, like there's something about, I told my doctor, I was like, it feels like there's something about me and I don't get it, because not that I wish I had a normal sleep schedule, but I wish I understood why I don't get exhausted the way other people are like, "I'm so tired." I get that every once in a while, but I never feel like that. And my doctor, after hearing all this, my impassioned plea, like, "Help me, please." His response, "Huh." The thing, Richard Dawson asking, what's something you don't want to hear on Family Feud your doctor say? Number 1 is probably, "That doesn't look good," followed by, "Huh, a close second or third, for
Their
fuck's sake.
brains just circling like, well, I don't know what to say here.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So being a night owl, I honestly do my best work between 9 and 4 in the morning. I feel
That's
like
awesome. That's
personally.
awesome. Well, we are right in that sweet spot. So Chris, I am catching you in 2024 as a host of the Culturecast, which has been on for 10
10
years.
years in October.
And how many episodes? 1,000?
So that's the funny thing. In terms of how many episodes, it's
600.
653.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which is nothing to sneeze at. A lot of
No.
those are what I would call mainline episodes. So
Hmm.
every month we have a different theme, and then we'll do every week a different movie within said theme. And then sometimes, and not just like, sometimes, I mean, I told you this, I think when we spoke the first time, like, I love having people on who just want to talk about shit. Like, pick a movie that you've always wanted to talk about, and let's just talk about it, because
Yeah.
something good can come out of it. And I like collaborating with motivated people. Uh,
Sure.
I mean, we're talking at 1 in the morning. That's pretty goddamn motivated by my approximation. But that has kind of been where that was the onus into podcasting. But what's funny is, and I was telling this kind of parts of this story to my wife when I was in LA for a podcasting thing in March. I listened to podcasting for the first time when I was in high school.
Hmm.
I listened to, I want to say it was within the first 50. I know it was within the first 100. It may have been within even the first 50, maybe the first 25 episodes of Film Spotting.
Wow.
Which is like, now it's like that's like one of the granddaddies of podcasting for movie podcasters.
Right.
Adam Kempenar and Sam Holgren. Like, I was listening to it when it was the two of them, because
That's
it wasn't
awesome.
after a while Sam Holgren left because it started taking up too much time. But I listened to their episode on Batman Begins and episode 3, and I never thought then that I would be doing that. I would be sharing that space with them. I never thought, I never even put two and two together. And now here I am, like you said, 10 years on down the road with 18 shows that I've either on consistently or I have completed. So
That's wild. Well, let's pause there because that's another thing I want to kind of dive into. So I don't think for people that don't know, Weirding Way is right now has 18 podcasts in the roster, right? So it's
it's
a
actually more than 18. It's 18 of stuff that I'm on. And then I think you add an additional, let's say there's 25, because I think that's closer. Ones that are also, because there are also a couple shows that we have recorded that are coming out this year.
that's awesome. Well, but then you have things like 80s Ladies, right? Or
Yeah, I have essentially, that is, I have been on one episode of their show, but that is hosted by two women who are two of the funniest and most knowledgeable podcasters that I know. They won a Webby Award, or they were nominated for a Webby this year. We don't know if they won or not, but they won an award at they won an award from the Podcast Awards for best female-led show, and I think best pop culture show of 2023, and that was their second season. Uh,
amazing.
Also, Mike White's show, The Projection Booth, which I personally find to be the best movie podcast on the internet. It's the only one that I will listen to. That's part of Weirding Way. And I mean, I co-founded the network with Mike White, who hosts that show. And he's only been doing podcasting a couple of years longer than me. He's been doing it for 13 years and I've been doing it for 10. So do I wish I had gotten in college when I was like 21? Maybe. But I think I would have been a real shithead. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
shithead now, but I think I'm an entertaining shithead. I think I would have been just like an insufferable shithead the way most people were early in their lives in college.
Yeah, you don't really know anything, even if you think you do, right?
Right.
Um,
Oh, you think you do. You think you do know everything. It's not
oh
if
yeah,
you do.
oh yeah,
Part of the problem is the being certain that you know everything. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, well, but this is, I mean, it's such an amazing story because you essentially, to be able to keep up with this, you are watching or talking about movies constantly, but you have a full-time job, and so this is just a hobby, but this is a hobby that has become something that is like you have an impact on culture now, and like there are 25 ways where people can find the work that you're doing, which is
Right.
amazing.
Well, and again, what I do, I would say that, like, in terms of, here's how the sausage is made, folks. You don't make a lot of money doing this unless you're doing this at a very high scale. And I'm talking like a scale that's hard to get to, because I know that my show and Mike's show and a lot of the shows on our network are in the top 10% of shows on the internet. Mike's show is in the top 1% of shows on the internet in terms
Mm-hmm.
of views and reach and downloads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Joe
Mm-hmm.
Rogan's show is in the top 0.01%. That's a
Mm.
huge margin between the
Yeah.
two. So you don't make a lot of money doing this. I do have a quote full-time job unquote. I would consider myself a social media consultant because I work with a couple startups doing social media stuff. But
Sure.
again, it's similar to this where it's like we're working really hard because we're putting in the work and we hope that something comes out of the work. That's the thing. I'll tell you, you said it, and I will elaborate. I watch movies every day, at least
Uh,
one movie a day. I
That's
can't tell
awesome.
you the last time that a day has gone by that I haven't watched something. And it's awesome, yes, but having to do that much kind of numbs you to the idea of being able to watch movies for the sole enjoyment of watching them. It's like a chef who comes home and then has to cook dinner. It's like,
Sure.
shit, man, can someone else do this for me? When I watch a movie for fun, I can't help but be analytical and critical. I have to
Yeah.
turn it off as much as I can because, again, if you've been doing this as long as I have, or as long as so many other people have, like Mike, or people in the industry in print like Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly, I don't know, everybody's process is different, but I'm assuming we all do get to a point where it's like I just can't divorce myself from the work.
No, of course not. Well, especially when every one of the 18 podcasts you're on has a slightly different flavor and
Mm-hmm.
approach and style and goal, right?
Right. And
Um,
what's weird is I spend a lot of my time on the things that aren't movie related, talking about 70s cop shows or 70s cop adjacent things. Like I'm on a Barney Miller show that was originally a Kolchak show. It ended as a Kolchak show. And then we were like, what do we do next? Barney Miller. We're almost done with it. We've been doing it since before the pandemic. Um, and then we're doing a Columbo show as well, which is another 70s cop thing.
hell yeah.
Yet another Columbo show. It's called Shabby Detective, but Mike always says it's yet another Columbo podcast because there are a lot of Columbo podcasts out there. Unironically, a lot. Like people love Columbo because it's a great show.
It's
But
amazing.
yeah, I mean, for the most part, so that's the thing. I don't know what it is about me specifically, but I'm the kind of person who just I always want to be learning something or finding something or reading something or in absorbing more knowledge, because I feel like the ability to absorb knowledge then leads to the ability to make connections, either super obvious and tangible or more esoteric. But if you can justify them and explain why, that's part of this job. The people who do this job well are the people who can think outside of the box and do a
Yeah.
better job writing and critiquing film than just saying it was good or it was bad. Like that's not fucking helpful, is what that is.
I I, I get shit from my co-hosts Adam and Zach on when we because this podcast is half interviews and then half just like film discussion.
Sure,
So on the
sure.
film discussion part, Zach and Adam jump in, and they give me shit because we'll be talking. The other day I was talking. We were doing Lars von Trier's last what was it, Nymphomaniac, and then House that Jack built.
Right. Our friend Ryan Verrill's on that episode.
You got it. You nailed it. And we were talking about the way that Nymphomaniac is told, and in my mind went straight to Princess Bride because it's structurally the same. Now,
Right.
the content of those movies is quite different, but structurally there's like a younger person telling a story to an older person, so it just felt like I was watching a
Right,
really
right.
kind of fucked up Princess Bride. But to your point, like I think there's a certain kind of personality, or maybe you just, I don't know what it is, you've seen enough movies or something, but like I don't find that an odd connection. I'm just sort of like, oh, and it's kind of interesting.
And you
But then
can
I was like,
justify it. You can
yeah,
justify
yeah,
it.
yeah, right. But then I was like, what are you talking about? That's not the Princess Bride, anyways. So I get it.
I'm with you. I personally, again, like I spend so much time ingesting pop culture, be it movies, be it music, be it television, be it print, be it something I really like, which is video games, which I don't get to talk about essentially at all. Um, or board games for that matter, and not like the ones for families, but the ones that take 5 hours and exhaust people at the end of it. I don't get
Mm-hmm.
to talk about everything I really like. And that's the thing. Outwardly, if you were to listen to the stuff that I create, a lot of it is, like you said, TV and movies. And frankly, it's more TV than it is movies. I mean, I do a weekly movie show, but I also record 4 to 5 times a month on cop stuff. Like, again, Barney Miller, Columbo. Then I'm also on Midnight Viewing, which is a anthology show,
Mm-hmm.
which is for we're covering horror anthology stuff. So we started with Twilight Zone 1985, then we did Night Gallery, and now
Awesome.
we're on Tales from the Dark Side.
That's awesome.
And that spawned off of a podcast that I was the second show I ever did, which was Chronicles from the Crypt, which was a show going through Tales from the Crypt, 2 episodes at a time, which I got 2/3 of the way through, lost my co-host, started podcasting it with someone else. At the end of the first episode we recorded, we both looked at each other and said, huh, we should probably just restart and do this all over again, huh? So we did. And we went from the beginning. I went from the beginning again, all the way to the end of the show. And then we roped our friend Mike White in by going, oh, let's do something else anthology related. Twilight Zone 1985. Originally, the show was called Dreams for Sale. Then it was called Midnight Viewing for the Night Gallery. And now it's just called Midnight Viewing permanently. But it went from a monthly show to a bi monthly show to a fucking weekly show now. So and that's like eight ways down. But like I said, I talk about a lot of TV, but movies are part and parcel to all of this. But the things I do on a daily basis that I engage in, like at home, I work out a lot, I play video games a lot when I can, and I cook. And like I don't get to talk about any of that shit on podcasts. Like
Yeah,
pretty
yeah, yeah.
far afield from what I spend a lot of my time being professional about.
Yeah, right. Um, yeah, we have a lot of similarities. That's interesting. I do most of the cooking for the house as well, but um,
And I love doing it, like more than anything else.
same, same.
Yeah,
It's super fun. Um, Going back to young Chris,
sure.
um, to seeing where you are now,
Right.
like, have you thought about, or like, as you reflect back on your childhood, was there a moment where like entertainment kind of clicked for you? Were you like me, where your parents just popped you in front of the TV and that was the babysitter? Or like, was it a conscious choice for you? Or like, how did you start to kind of go down this path?
I don't. So I've never shared this story anywhere because nobody's really ever asked, and maybe it was a matter of just getting to the answer mentally and then crafting how I could tell it to someone
Okay.
from there. So I don't remember a specific day. I don't remember a specific time. This happened when I was some age between 3 to 5. I would have to go and look when this movie came out specifically because it was within 6 months of the movie coming out.
Okay.
The first thing I can remember watching right now, sitting here, the youngest version of myself that I can remembering was something that I watched as that young person.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my family was, well, I actually kind of remember exactly when it was. It was Thanksgiving. My family from out of state would come to our house, and our house was where everybody would meet for Thanksgiving. And my parents would always drive down to the Blockbuster down the street from our
Yep.
house.
Yep. Yep.
And I would always beg to rent a game system. My parents did not want me to have a video game system growing up at all. And then they
Mm-hmm.
eventually caved. Once I became an adult, they bought me an Xbox 360 for my birthday. That's beside the point. But they went to Blockbuster and rented some movies. And I remember asking for a specific movie if they had rented it when they got back. And my dad said, no, instead we rented The Mating Rituals of the Tsetse Flies, which is that's my dad's humor. He just says some wild shit. I
Okay.
say some wild shit too. And a lot of it is like just like that's you're a Reddit guy. Hashtag brand new sentence. I've heard a lot of them growing up in my household between my dad and I.
Okay.
So he said, no, it's The Mating Rituals of the Tsetse Fly. Now, I haven't said the title of the movie yet because I didn't want to give it away. Because I think, frankly, in a lot of ways, it's informed me and the person that I am, and maybe not the comedic stylings that I have, but the world that I kind of fell into just by the virtue of the person I am. That movie, it's genuinely one of the first, if not the first movie I remember watching was Ace Ventura Pet Detective.
Nice. Hell yeah.
And like I remember just being enamored with that
Oh
movie.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
and I think in a lot of ways, and I've never really said this out loud on a recording, but I've always probably wanted to be an actor. I know that I'm funny, and I hate knowing that I'm funny because whenever anyone says you're funny, the first thing you're supposed to say is, "No, I'm not." It's like,
Mhm.
okay. But you don't want to come off like a prick because
Right, right,
anybody
right.
who is funny should be proud of the fact that they're funny because there are so many people that can't take a fucking joke.
And
Like,
so many people that aren't funny.
yeah, well, I mean, people that are not funny is fine, but like I look at someone who can't take a joke as like not my enemy as someone who's funny, but like someone who I'm like, why? Just why? Because at some point, like, because I really enjoy and appreciate making people laugh.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, it's an easy way to connect with people is through
Yeah.
comedy and humor. And again, it's more for me, it's more observational with a very strong hint of angry political Bill Hicksism shit. I mean, I love Bill Hicks. He was my favorite. Like him and Carlin are my favorite comedians because they both knew how to be provocative, but they were honest about it. Like there are provocateurs who are just being provocative and don't give a
Right,
shit.
right, right,
They
right.
were provocative for a reason with intent behind it. And I look at something like Ace Ventura, which I mean, that movie is a massive success now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw an interview with David Allen Greer recently where he was talking about how he essentially was like, "Hey Jim, I'm sorry your movie's not going to be successful," because like they all watched it at the premiere and like nobody thought it was funny. Apparently, they were like, "This movie's going to be dog shit." And then David Allen Greer wishes he hadn't turned down Ace Ventura, right? Probably wouldn't have worked as well. But Jim Carrey in that movie, he does impersonations, he does physical comedy.
Yeah.
It's also like, again, it's kind of weirdly a noir movie as well, like a Miami noir, kind of
Hmm.
like, what's the name of that movie with Fred Ward and Alec Baldwin?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
you know what I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about? It's like
Hold on
that.
one second. I just saw this recently. It's a Radiance release, and also has released
Something
in the.
blue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of the. Um, anyways, I know exactly.
It's based off of a book as well. And Fred Ward plays the character in the movie of the
Miami
detective.
Blues.
Miami Blues, yeah. So it's like it's kind of like that too because it's 90s Miami, so it's hot and he's also
Right.
wearing like kind of loose fitting clothing to stay
Uh-huh.
cool. So and it has Courtney Cox in it and it has
Hmm.
Tone Loc who I mean Tone Loc's great. Yeah, so I honest to God, that's the first movie I remember seeing. I could tell you the first movie I remember seeing in theaters was Independence Day, which has
Oh,
made
hell
a
yeah.
large impact on me as well because uh man, I love that movie. I know it's a I don't know, it's a problematic movie, but I know it's not a great movie, but it's also just a fucking entertaining movie. And when we're talking about things being entertaining, they don't have to reinvent the fucking wheel. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, Ace Ventura. That's the first thing I remember. I don't know why though. You asked part of this that's hard to answer even now, which is why or how did I become enamored with it? I think I've always wanted to be myself, and in wanting to be myself, I don't see a place in the world for myself, so I have to make a place in the world for myself.
Okay.
And I just happen to land on this version right now is doing podcasting. I'd like to do more video and other things now that I'm more comfortable with this person that I am. But I think I've
Mm.
always wanted to be someone who can be entertaining, but also is knowledgeable. Because that's the thing, doing what we do, there are people that'll sit and just tell you an IMDb page, and they're not going to be entertaining. Like they're not going to hold your attention for more than a
Hmm.
couple minutes.
No, totally.
Anybody can read a fucking Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
AI can do it. I've seen it. I've heard it. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to do a movie podcast or any kind of show where there's expected some sort of analytical and critical thinking being used, but also entertaining. Entertaining doesn't necessarily need to be funny. Entertaining can be enlightening or insightful, but throwing a little humor in is never a bad thing.
I remember we just got finished with all of Ventura's movies, like you said, like we talked about. And man, you know, the funny thing is, most people don't know about him as a director, not as a person, because there's some controversy there. But as a director, you know, he's quite funny actually. A lot he uses
Yeah.
humor a lot.
The House That
Uh,
Jack Built's a fucking hilarious movie. Is it
right.
traditional comedy? No, but kind of. I mean, there's a fair amount of slapstick in the movie, like
Yeah.
shockingly for a
Yeah.
movie about a guy murdering people. There's a shocking amount of slapstick.
Exactly. So like, you know, and I'm with you. I think you have to be able to either, you know, point out things that are funny or find a way to like inject some kind of humor in the insanity that some people try to do in the movies they make. Or just try to be analytical. It's like a balance, right? You can't be too
Right.
far. I was listening to the I hope she's not listening. I don't mean to offend anybody. The person who did the podcast, the commentary for Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound on the original Criterion DVD. I was listening to the commentary and I made it 15 minutes in and I was just like, I can't do it.
Huh.
Like, so it's
What was
analytical.
it?
It's just analytical, but it's to the point where there's just no flavor, no life.
Right. It's just like regurge of your notes.
Just reading facts, yeah. And it's just like, dude, can't.
Yeah. This, I mean,
Um,
look, I'm not saying we're not sitting here and saying we're fucking rocket scientists, but I will tell you, and this I think is, I honest to God that think that this is something that people don't think about enough. We might not be rocket scientists, but if you honestly listen to this or listen to anything that I make, and you are somehow in any form or fashion entertained by that and continue to engage with that, I don't need to be a fucking rocket scientist because getting someone else to listen to something that I have to say and finding value in it is more important than going to the moon. Because you know what? Going to the moon is one thing, but what about all the people back on Earth that you can talk to? Well, they're talking with each other and having interesting dialogues with one another, and that can make a difference too. Just being good, arbiters of, no gatekeeping when it comes to movies, working with people of color, working with people that non-binary and
right.
LGBTQI plus. I mean, doing all of those things because at the same time, reality is here. Let's be honest. Two white dudes sitting talking right now is the way that this would be seen by anybody. I'm fucking non-binary and bisexual, but you can't tell that unless I tell you.
Hmm.
And like that's the problem with this world of entertainment. It has been so long a boys club. And
Right.
there need to be people doing better than that. And that's part of what I'm trying to do, which is do better in a space that people haven't necessarily been doing better in. And I know that, inches aren't miles, but inches add up.
Um, there's I'm hoping that this happens. My workplace, I work for an IT kind of consulting company, and they've approached me to lead a podcast around bringing AI into the workplace, into kind of large enterprise, and interviewing people because that's my background is kind of I'm on the sales side, but selling AI.
Sure.
And as we're laying out the charter for this thing, we are specifically going to try to find every single episode be a woman or be a person of color or be somebody who, like you said, LGBTQ. Like we're going to intentionally try to showcase this world and say like these things can coexist, and they don't have to be like there's no like that the whole idea of like bringing on like the token black person back in the day, and then when
Right, right,
like
yeah.
you don't have to do that. Like no, the
And
whole
you don't have to
world.
ghettoize them either. You don't have to be like, oh, only on this show. Like, we're not doing that either. I mean, that's
No,
a
no, no,
thing.
no.
Like, it is kind of
Yeah.
in and of itself, it can be a thing.
So I think you're right. I think it's important for two white guys to try to do that, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it with They Live by Film. But anyways, that's a different conversation. So as you talk about podcasting, there's two things that come to mind. There's one, I remember at South by Southwest about 10 years ago, Ira Glass came on to speak, and he was talking about how he's like, can you imagine NPR? We don't have any money, right? But the podcast that they started doing, they had ad revenue from it, and all of a sudden
Right.
NPR was making like millions off of these podcasts because they were popular. So he's like, imagine a world where, forget the one they did where it was like trying to solve a crime.
Oh,
Is the
cereal,
one that
right?
Serial, Thank you. See, like, imagine a world where there is a journalist, like publication that had 6 full-time reporters in the field collecting information live. Like that doesn't exist anymore. But podcasting kind of like enabled that. So that's one extreme, right? But then the other extreme that I think is really interesting, probably, I'm assuming we fit more into this side, but tell me if I'm making assumptions about you. But the other side is, you have this platform now where you kind of put something out there, like you're talking about Columbo, you're talking about, whatever, like anything that's like top of mind for you, right? The entire run of Outer Limits. And for the people that need to find that and listen to it, it lives on in perpetuity as long as you have a station, right? Or as long as you have
Or as long as you pay your hosting fees, yeah.
as long as you pay your hosting fees, right? So you record this thing and it's there's that moment of like release where like, okay, what are the listens and stats?
Right.
But then you also just kind of have this thing that exists like forever, which I
Oh
think is
boy. You want to talk about a fucking nutsoid conversation to have? I want to know what the last thing the last person hears before the last light goes off in the universe. Because somebody's going to be listening to or watching something as the universe comes to its inevitable close. And here's the thing, like you just mentioned, we're sitting here now recording this in 2024. Won't say when, because you don't want to never want to date these things, but it's in 2024. Like you said, there could be someone listening to this right now in 2080.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, again, you kind of mentioned it's like you're having a conversation. We're having a conversation here, but at the same time, we're having a conversation that we're leaving for other people to engage with 10, 20, 30, 40, who knows? And
exactly.
again, sitting here now, we don't know anything of what that's like. We can't even begin to fathom that. But the thing that I know for a fact that will exist is entertainment. There has to be something.
Yeah.
Will our things be listened to after we're dead and gone? Frankly, that might help with the fucking listens. Oh, these guys are dead? Oh, let's listen. There's no more, you mean? I mean, that's not a thing. I mean, that's a gimmicky thing. Someone killed themselves to be a popular podcaster. Boy.
Well, you're past 27, right? Isn't that the age you're
Yeah,
supposed
that
to be like,
yeah, that you're right. Yeah, I can't go out with I guess was that River Phoenix? Was River Phoenix that
Kurt
died at 27?
Cobain, I think.
Cobain. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
if you believe the mainstream news. Um I mean, there's a very high possibility that someone just killed Kurt Cobain. Doesn't matter either way, he's dead. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the sad thing is that he's dead. But to circle back to all of this, like at the end of the day, the thing that I think of in terms of what you were alluding to is also another thing, which is, do you have kids? Maybe, yes, no. So I don't have a lot of recordings of my grandparents talking.
Oh,
But
yeah.
holy shit, if I were to have kids, which I don't want kids, so we're not having kids. If we were to have kids, they would have recordings of me that no one else in my life has anything like that of them
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anyone. Like if I were to drop dead tomorrow, I would at least be somewhat comfortable knowing that if someone wanted to engage with the version of me, a version of me, they'd still be able to sit and listen and hear, what it was like to talk to me or be in a room together or something like that. If that's something
Right.
that someone gives a shit enough about, which maybe, I mean, I'm sure there are some people in my life, not to discount it completely, but I'm also not trying to sound like a person who everybody cares about. But it's weird because like I don't even have that really of my parents. And they've been around for a lot of the technology of it all. Like I have videos that they've taken of me where I can hear them, but I don't take videos of them at holidays, but I am leaving this for whoever,
Yeah.
be it my wife, be it my friends, be it other partners of
Sure.
creative or romantic or whatever. Like, someday I'll be dead. And if someone wants to hear what I sounded like, good or bad, you can find it. That's the legacy. But again, it's also this weird fucking thing of, I think about this a lot, like how many times I've watched Lord of the Rings. I watched Lord of the Rings when I was 15. I've watched it when I was 30. I've watched it when I was 20. And some point I will watch it the last time I watch it and I won't even realize it. And it's like, holy shit. One day I will have recorded my last podcast and I hope I can go out on my own terms. But knowing me, I have joked about it. It has been something that I've thought about. I don't think it would be funny. It would be funny for the other. It would be funny for me just to see the reaction of the other person. But I'm not saying I want to die live on camera while podcasting, but it would provide for a pretty funny clip for YouTube if it did happen. Just
You go
imagine
viral.
if I dropped dead while we were sitting and talking.
Yeah.
Like, you'd just be like, is this for fucking what would you do? If I dropped dead right now, what would you even do? You'd be like, Ryan, do you have Chris's wife's number? Can you check to make sure he's not dead? Because like there's not you know what I mean? I'm just saying that's a good way to
No,
get a rating bump for like a week.
we had, there was I don't want to go too far down this specific tangent, but there was an interesting moment because Discord blew up in the pandemic, right? Because all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden everybody was doing stuff on Discord. There was one particular group I was in where somebody was suicidal, and I remember thinking like, huh, you think you know somebody, but I actually don't know anything about this person. Like I
Right.
couldn't tell you the street he lived on, let alone the house, let
Right.
alone his last name, right?
Right.
Like
Oh yeah.
I actually don't know anything about this person. Anyways, it's kind of a interesting moment.
Well, have you met Ryan in person?
No, no.
See, that's the thing. I've met Ryan in person. He is one of the few people I've met in person from doing this, and I met him quicker in person than I have ever met anybody else. Because I
That's
worked
awesome.
with Mike White for 6 or 7 years before I met him, and I've
That's
spent
awesome.
2 hours with him in person having Korean barbecue, and I have talked to him more than I've talked to anybody else in any recording I've done.
Oh yeah.
Period. Yeah,
That's
he's the person I've collaborated with the most, and I've spent all of 2 to 3 hours in person with him, but I've spent countless hours recording and primarily recording. Honestly, that's the funniest thing. I understand, speaking of people that inspire me or the directions that I like to think I come from.
hmm.
Um, I would liken mine and Mike's friendship to Penn and Teller.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We work really well together, but we don't like hang out. We rarely even you and I sitting and talking before this recording, Mike and I don't really do that unless I'm like, "Hey, I need to tell you something." But we normally don't just sit and shoot the shit like you and I did. Like and Mike and I never really have, but him and I like he is the person that I have worked with the most. I am the person that he has worked with the most. There are people that would kill to be in my position to be someone that Mike White wants to work with constantly because he
Yeah,
does.
that's
And
awesome.
I know that, and I don't take that for granted. Like I know that there are people that would kill to be in my position, and I would never, I would never take that for granted because I can't. But at the same time, like 13 years podcasting is a long time. 10 years is
Exactly.
a long time. I mean, that's the other
Exactly.
thing. I don't
Put
foresee
your
myself
time in.
ever stopping.
Well, the way it's going, you don't have to. But that's a great segue. So what came first in your head? The idea of, because I know if I remember correctly, I can't remember if I read this in doing research for this or if we spoke about it, but you have an entrepreneur, oh, you mentioned it. You have an entrepreneurial background.
Yep.
So, so what came first for you? Being an entertainer or being an entrepreneur and a host of a bunch of podcasts and trying to make like a network out of it?
So what's funny is, and this is again, you're getting some stuff that I don't talk about ever anywhere else. So here you go. I actually worked pretty steadily on something for a couple years that
Okay.
I thought was going to be kind of that thing that you're kind of alluding to take me to the next level of like, what was I initially? Was I this or was I that?
Hmm.
There was a
Hmm.
moment where I was essentially a podcaster turned audio editor who was then a associate producer at a production company in Hollywood that was
Okay.
working directly with Ron Howard's arm of his podcasting company now, Imagine. So I think what came first is me. I don't think if I didn't know that I entertained other people and said not crazy things, but I say some wild stuff sometimes and it's entertaining or it's memorable or whatever, or it sticks, I guess is probably the better way of putting it. I think I realized that I could make people laugh. And if I could make people laugh, I could disarm possibly dangerous situations. Read into that however you'd like.
Okay.
Um, and in doing that, I was like, okay, I kind of came out of my shell as an adult when I was in 12th grade. Not that I'm saying I didn't have any friends, but when I was in 12th grade, I was like, I looked to my left and looked to my right, and I was like, I'm not going to see another one of these motherfuckers ever again,
Uh-huh.
unless I unless I want to. And you know what?
Hmm.
For most of these assholes, because I went to a school with a graduating class of 1,200.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know 15 people out of 1,200 kids. How many other stories exist out there? Like they have 10 year, they're a 10-year anniversary coming up, and they're like, "Oh, you gonna go?" Fuck no. I don't even know half. I don't even know 1/10 of the people. So no, I'm not gonna. If I were single, looking to mingle, and wanted to be like, hey, look at me now. I am successful and I am way more in tune with myself than I was in high school. And maybe someone who I thought was attractive in high school is still attractive and would be into me now because maybe their life is weird, but I'm married and I don't want to do that. So no, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I think I realized very early on, like I know I'm entertaining. I know that I can make people laugh. And then I can also be critical and analytical and I can prove a point. I don't just say shit to say shit. I say shit because I genuinely feel that way. When I was on Ryan's show for the first time, his audience was like, man, what's this guy's deal? And it's like, what's my deal? I am me. And I realized that sometimes people aren't genuine. I am, period, the end. It's a problem, frankly. I wish I could lie and be like some really cool person. But I mean, there are people that I know that think I'm cool and think what I do is cool. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll say yes, because I don't want you to feel like you've made the wrong decision in saying this to me. But at the same time, like it's hard to balance these things, to know that you can be entertaining, but not go, I am entertaining. Maybe that's the line that separates the really successful people from the people that are just middle of the road, mid-level talents, as Bill Murray called Chevy Chase one time. I don't know, because like I have a hard time acknowledging that I'm entertaining. I don't like doing that. Do you? When someone tells you, hey, Chris, also named Chris, do you are you're entertaining? How would you respond to that?
It's an interesting question. I would first want to know, I would, my first response would probably be something self-deprecating, like,
Right.
"Oh,
Which
you
you
must have
should
caught
not
me on a
fucking
good day,"
do.
or whatever, right?
Yeah,
You know.
which you should not do. Like every therapist and psychiatrist will tell you, the moment you start tearing yourself down in front of other people, they just go, "Oh, my enthusiasm for you was misplaced, huh?" I mean, think about it
Yeah.
though. Think about it. It's like that fucking joke that we all used to say as millennials when someone would go take the trash out and be like, "Oh, let me jump in there with you." Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
literally a very close friend of ours, like I had to tell her, like, you got to stop saying that shit. Cause
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're just hurting yourself. So I get the self-deprecating thing, but come on,
yeah.
you want people to listen to your show.
I think so. There's an interesting, like, yeah, we won't self-diagnose They Live by Film too much, but we haven't even done any real marketing for this. This is just like the audience that we found has been um,
Organic.
post organic and post. I guess we've technically done some because we posted on Reddit a bit, but
That's not advertising. That's just putting it where people who will listen to things are
yeah, that's basically
congregating.
how.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's the
exactly.
it's the equivalent of going to a fucking swap meet or something like
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
digital swap meet,
Yeah,
a Discord.
exactly.
What do you call a Discord channel other than just like a place for people to exchange ideas and other things? Like it's a community.
Right.
You're going into another community and trying to convert those people into your people as well. I mean,
Yeah,
smart.
yeah, and meet people that you think would want to kind of run alongside you, I guess.
Right. Oh yeah.
You've kind of gotten to this in some ways, but maybe just to ask directly, you know, you you have this desire to be entertaining, and you are entertaining,
Thank you.
and you have a
See,
desire to
that's the
be.
right response.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And you have a desire to be seen that way, and to kind of make a mark on the world, is what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
as an entertainer. So. Have you thought at all about like what's next? Because, do you like do you just sort of keep going, assuming that at some point like something's gonna break? Like, are you kind of intentional with the way that you're taking next steps? Like, how do you approach that as you continue to grow?
So I will tell a story to answer the question.
Yes.
So earlier this year, I went to Los Angeles and I went to the Podcast Movement's Evolution of 2024 in
Okay.
LA, which is a podcast convention for podcasters. So
Okay.
industry people are there, like
Okay.
me, like you. So be it producers, be it sound engineers, be it the talent, you and me, the sound engineers, you and me, the audio editors,
Right,
you
right,
and
right,
me.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
right, right,
But
right.
the gag gets old when it's just the same people doing it over and over. So showed up there for this convention. The first night is the Ambies, which is the award show put on by the Podcasting Academy. The Academy of Podcasting, is that what it is? Either way, the name is terrible. And they're a self-appointed governing body of podcasters.
Interesting.
Boy, the unilateral decision makers are
Yeah.
great. I love it. So I'm sitting in the audience with some of the podcasters from the network, Sharon and Susan of 80s TV Ladies. Susan's husband is Richard Haddam. He has his own show over on the Astonishing Legends Network, but he also is on Rank and on Bond on Weirding Way Media. He also wrote Under Siege 2 and
Oh yeah.
the Mothman prophecies. So he actually became friends with Mike and I when we were doing Cold Check. He is the one and only person in the industry that I know who reached out to me as opposed to the other way around. I'm friends with some people in the industry that I've interviewed and then we kind of shot the shit afterwards. But Richard reached out to us. So I met him. Him and I are friends. I stayed with him while I was there. It was fun. It was a great time getting to be a podcaster, is what it felt like.
Yeah.
But in this award show, it was made very clear that a lot of the shows that were winning were BBC, NPR, LA Times,
Okay.
Wondery, Pineapple Studios. I mean, Wondery's Amazon. So it seemed like one hand passing money to the other type shit,
Yeah.
where it's like
Right. Right.
everybody's
Right.
just patting themselves on the back. And I remember sitting and thinking to myself, like, what do I have to do here to break through this? Because this is a room of people who are doing this one notch above where we are effectively.
Mm-hmm.
We're like
Mm-hmm.
right
Mm-hmm.
there knocking at the door because again, once you have a network with shows that are bringing in total in the network like over 1 million a year, this is not, we're not talking fucking bullshit anymore. This is these are real numbers that real people can make real decisions off of,
Sure.
that advertisers can see and go, huh, maybe it's worth us giving these people some money that then can go into us doing more things. Because again,
Uh-huh.
right now we're self-funded effectively. We take the money that we make and we put it back into the podcast and the podcast network. It's more of a co-op than a network. I mean, we have access to some tools like Descript, Canva,
Okay.
Adobe Enhance, and that's what we offer to the people that are on the network. We say, hey, look, it's not everybody can join just because we're not even really looking right now if anybody's listening. But if you reach out and you've got a podcast that you've been doing for a while consistently, I'll have that conversation with you. But I noticed at the podcast thing in LA that the push is now for video, and video in podcast land is here even if we don't like it. And
Mm-hmm.
people want to see us
Yeah.
and hear us. And
Yeah.
if they want that, give the people what they want, is what I've been told. And look,
Mm-hmm.
to push people that haven't ever done video to do video is a uphill battle, and it's a losing proposition because there are plenty of people, I know them, that aren't as good looking as we are. I'm saying that sarcastically. I mean, I'm not saying that we aren't, but you know what I mean.
I
Some
know what
people
you
just
mean.
don't want to be on fucking camera, and that is their right, and that is valid 100%. However, I think for me to answer the question and to give you the idea of why I'm answering it the way I'm answering it, I think it's important to be able to pivot. I think it's important to be able to look at what's
Mm-hmm.
going on in the industry and say, okay, they want video, give them fucking video. If they want a supernatural spooky show, give them a supernatural spooky show. I spent 5 years doing that, and I spent 3.5 of those 5 years doing that show by myself, essentially. It was a
Jeez.
thankless job. Yeah, but it was really successful and popular because it was in that swath of time the last couple years where true crime was like the fucking shit and
Oh yeah.
supernatural
Yeah.
and paranormal stuff was the fucking shit. And so what
Uh-huh.
do? You say, okay, we're going to make one of those shows. And that was in my wheelhouse anyways. So for me, I've always wanted to be an entertainer. I've always wanted to make a mark. And I've always wanted to be the kind of person who wasn't the person who got kicked out of college because they didn't go to class. That's an unreliable person. And unreliable people don't work with reliable people, because reliable people, when they realize someone's unreliable, they fucking split. And they
Right.
should split, because unreliable people, all they will do is drag you down. And I don't want to be that person. I don't even want to be perceived as that person, because, like we were talking about with politics, reality is fucking perception now, and perception is fucking reality. They do not
Yes,
exist separately anymore. And
that's right.
the optics of it all is what I like to say. Like,
Hmm.
the fucking optics of it are bad. It doesn't matter what the reality is. The
That's
optics
right.
are bad. Good luck
That's right.
getting anybody to your side, but the optics are bad. And so that's what I know. I know that I'm an entertainer, but the optics of an entertainer saying they're entertaining is not great. It makes you look like an asshole. But at the same time, the people that are doing this the most successfully can pivot, know that they can pivot and do it well. And so I feel like I'm trying to follow the lead of people like that and maybe be as successful as them. But at the same time, to your point, I kind of want to be not the boss, but I don't want anybody else to tell me what to do. Who
Yeah.
would?
Right.
And that's
Right.
important for me. That's the entrepreneurial thing kicking in. That, and my mom has said she knew that about me from like day one. She was like, you never wanted to work for the man, you wanted to be the man. My mom says that to me all the time. Like, all the time. All of my other family problems aside, I have always gotten that, because there was a time in my life where I wanted to be a chef, and I totally could have been. And I totally could have been entertaining too, because there was a time and a place where being kind of bold and brash would have been more acceptable than now. It just
Oh yeah.
seems derivative of so many other people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to be entertaining and also be the person in charge of doing things, because then you have to take the entertainer hat off and put on the business owner hat, and then you have unfun decisions to make and unfun conversations to have. But I'm glad I have that knowledge too, which, as pains me to say, as someone who hates academia.
No, I mean, yeah, like you said, if you're getting a million listens a year on the network, you're having to make some decisions that are more than they're not just everything's not on a whim, and everything's not just kind of how your gut's feeling that day. Like you're making some more, responsible decisions.
How long did it
Um,
take you to start your podcast? Like, when you started this show, how many episodes did you have recorded?
no, I don't know if we're a good example. We,
No, I'm just no, I'm
unless,
just I'm
we,
just
we,
asking. It's not an example. I'm just curious.
I mean, the way that this started was we were on a weekly film club on Reddit,
Okay.
and Adam was like, the people that were most active joined a Discord to like plan for the weekly film
Sure.
discussion.
So it's like a book club type thing.
Yeah, book club basically, right? Yeah. And it's still going on. I think we're at like 120 180 movies or something like that. It's been
It's
going on for
awesome.
a while. Yeah. It's fun. It's nice. Um, but Adam was like, any of y'all want to try a podcast? Zach had done one before. I never had, but have always wanted to try. And so we said, sure. We spoke a little bit about what to do in the first episode, kind of planned it out and started recording, and started out as doing every 2 weeks. And that was in around December of 21. And then moved down to every week now, about a year ago.
But you didn't bank any episodes ahead of time, right?
Nah.
So let me ask you, where you are now, if you were to start another show, would you just go, it's time to go, boys, and we're going? Or would you bank like that's for me, that's like the biggest thing that I've learned in all this is, if you plan ahead of time and you actually put some fucking foresight and thought into these things, as opposed to yee-haw, it's podcasting time, which, look, I'm not lying. It's not fun. This is a lot of fun, just getting to sit here and talk. Holy shit. Like, I'm not going to say like I get off on it, but like for me, a good conversation,
Yeah.
it can be better than sex, frankly. If you're stimulating me mentally, like, it's part of it.
Uh-huh.
I think, unfortunately, like so many other things, the fun and the idea of doing things can get in the way of the rational brain.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
with your dick. Like, look at, like, this is so fun and everybody wants to like, do it. Not everybody, but like everybody knows that friend who says in front of the other friends, wish we had a microphone here so we could record this conversation. It's so entertaining.
Uh-huh.
Often the person saying that is not the entertaining one, I've noticed. Um, but it's, again, it's this idea of, like you kind of already alluded to, well, we're sitting here doing this. but we don't have anything banked. We don't have if we're sick next week, we don't have an episode. And like I
Right.
would never I have not done that since. The Culturecast is the only show I have done where I recorded it on Sunday and it came out on Tuesday. Everything else I've done, we're like months, weeks, now with Ryan and Film Foundations, almost a year ahead.
Yeah, that's
And if
awesome.
I were to bring somebody onto the network now, I would not bring someone on who just had an idea. Be like, you need to have something. If it's a season of a show, it needs to be done. If it's a show that's ongoing, it needs to, you need to have banked episodes. The problem is what happens when we get to a topical show, like a politics show, like a wrestling show, like a sports show, things that have to be topical to the minute, right? That's
Yeah,
the
but that's
problem.
that's
I've never
diff
dealt with that though, you know?
that's a different muscle though, because that's more of like responding and reacting to things that are happening live, right?
Right.
That's
But my
different than
point is
breaking
like,
down.
how do you, if someone approaches you with an idea for your network with that show, you just have to take them on faith that they're going to do it every week. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
I'm sorry. I got you. Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
but to your point also, like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that I think are weird about doing live shows that this does, you don't have to worry about here.
yeah. Right,
Like, because so many people that are doing those kinds of things, it's also like a live show on YouTube or Twitch or
right.
Facebook even.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not quite ready to dive into that yet. But so Chris, you have I think I kind of at the beginning I started talking about like the Roger Corman or the Lloyd Kaufman of
Sure.
podcasting, and the reason I said that was because I think as I get to know you and as you talk more about it, your story is kind of based on this idea of let's just kind of roll up the sleeves and get it done, right?
Right.
Which I think is an interesting maybe place to park for just a second because one of the things that I think is hard about this, and you kind of just mentioned it a little bit, but I think most people don't realize is even if you have the gift of gab, even if you can just sit and kind of bullshit with people for a while, there's a different discipline to carve time out of your week to prepare notes, to watch a movie, to maybe sometimes twice, to you or three times, depending on how deep you want to go on it, right? With
Yeah.
all the other stuff going on in life, to kind of like come prepared to talk about something for a finite amount of time, know what you want to say going in, and then sort of trusting that you can kind of fill in the blanks, right? You're not going to
Right.
script it out, but like there is a discipline and a muscle to that I think is different. So if there's anybody who's listening either to our show or then what I hope happens is they go and listen to your network and your show.
One
Um,
can hope, it's free. You don't have to do anything other than click on through to the other side.
subscribe link, right? What is it? YouTube
Smash that
there.
like button, beat the
Smash
shit
that
out of
like
that like button. Yeah.
button.
Be aggressive. The like button did something to somebody because that's the only one that they want to smash. So
What would you have you ever had people come up to you before and ask, and if not, just what would you say to somebody that says, I want to start a podcast? Like, what, like, how do I know if I'm ready? Or like, what do I do for the first, like, few episodes? Like, how do I, yeah, you understand the question, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I wish I could give the old dumbass answer. Don't. Yeah, I'll gatekeep on behalf of all podcasters. No, I mean, look. Here's the thing about podcasting that is a reality that I think is more apparent now than ever. This is like the last bastion of free speech. Like
Mm,
there's no FTC here. There's no ESRB. There's no MPAA. There's nothing. There are no rules and regulations or guidelines. We can say whatever the fuck we want, whenever the fuck we want, however the fuck we want. And you know what? Because of the way podcasting is, you can kind of just make it appear on places and most of them aren't going to do shit about it. They're not going to take you down. You can use copyrighted music and most of the time you can get away with it because again, unless there's money to be made, nobody gives a shit. And I'm not saying that there's not money to be made in podcasting, but the scale's not there yet given how big the volume is.
yeah,
There is, I would say the amount of people doing this professionally is in the less than 1%, maybe even less than half of a percent. Um, because I mean, again, like in terms of doing this genuinely, organically for real, there are very few podcasts. It's a lot, but it's not that many, really.
Mm.
Again, it's a big number, but it's a big number with an even bigger number as the fucking sample pool. And
Yeah.
podcasting this year is 20 years old. This is the 20th year of podcasting. I've been podcasting for half as long as podcasting has been a thing. There are very few people alive right now in terms of the original entertainment industries like film or theater that can say they were part of this in the first 50 years of this existing.
Right,
Like
right,
it's
right.
it's kind of insane. So it's again, is it radio? No, it's not because there are no rules here. I can't be taken off of the air like in radio. There aren't any sort of guidelines to the way it works. So what I would say to someone wanting to get into this is figure out what you care about, what's important to you, be it entertaining someone. So there you go. You've got avenues to go down. Is it doing good? There are avenues to go down there.
Right,
Is
right, right.
is it is it conveying someone else's information to a new audience? Plenty of places to go there. We have a show like that on our network called Astounding Tales of the Public Domain because it's literally one of our podcasters turning public domain stories into audio scapes, I think is what he calls them. And you can do that because they're fucking public domain. You don't have to
That's
pay
awesome.
nobody.
That's awesome.
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, we're not the only ones doing it. We're the only ones doing it really well. A lot of them are just like copy, paste, punch into an AI thing. Hello, my name. Like you can always tell with the AI how bad
Yeah.
it is. It's
Uh-huh.
like with AI, it's always one word that it's just like it doesn't know how to say. And you're like,
That uncanny
oh,
valley.
yeah, that's the one word you can't say, AI. But I mean, not a lot of people are spending time to take the story, break it apart, turn it into a script, record it, edit it all together, and release it. That's what he was doing. Like, that's a lot of fucking work, especially just because, like you alluded to, this is not a thing you do to make money. This is a thing that is a hobby at first. If you start making money, it's either because you're trying to make money or because it just happened. I mean, some
Right,
people make money at this and they're probably just as confused as I am as to how it happened, but they ain't complaining because in this world with podcasting, it only takes one person to go to bat for you. The one right person going to bat for you can mean the world in terms
right.
of advertising, in terms of doors being opened. I would not be where I am right now without people like Mike White opening up certain doors for me, with people like Richard Haddam for taking me seriously, because again, brought me into his kind of inner circle of family and friends and
That's
other
awesome.
things. Again, that doesn't happen if you aren't willing to put yourself out there, willing to be honest and open, but also willing to be collaborative.
Right.
That's the other thing. I feel like, in terms of the collaborative arts, obviously we have film, that's a huge one. We have music, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
This is massive too. This, like, collaboration here is what kills us or makes us work. Going on other people's shows is the best way to find new audiences, especially if you're running in the sphere that, I mean, I'm running in a sphere that I'm already in with your show. This is the same sphere. If you were on my show, you're in the same sphere, maybe not completely overlapping, but
Right.
overlapping enough. And that's the thing. I mean, again, I love podcasting because it's collaborative. I think if you're looking to do this and you don't want to do it with other people, which I can completely understand as someone who has gone through hosts because of their inability to take this seriously, or maybe
Mm.
my my inability to see that they never were anyways, so I can take responsibility for that, or expectations changing. There was a time where I didn't want to do this all the time and I was doing other things, and now I do this all the time and I would love to continue to do this all the time for the foreseeable future. But there are other things I want to do as well. So I'm okay with taking a step back. But again, like, I love this so much, it would be hard for me to do it. It's hard to take a step back from something you love so much. And it is hard to look at this as a thing and go, huh, well, the network is a group of people all committed to doing the same thing, which is being successful together. That should be enough. So surround yourself with people that you want to work with, that are like minded, that are motivated, that raise you up with them, that don't speak down to you, that don't treat you like garbage, and you will find good people. And if you are again, good person, bad person, I'm not here to fucking judge. If you are someone that other people trust and find reliable, you might be brought into circles of people you would never have met otherwise. And also, I'm not a person that always says yes, but I rarely say no. I'll tell you that much. And I think that's a big thing. I'm not saying Jim Carrey's Yes Man changed my life, but the opportunities that I have had in my life have come from me saying yes at some very specific times that if I had said no, I who knows where I would be.
Yeah. There's that whole improv thing about yes and, which I think has a
Right.
lot of application even outside of improv.
Totally.
Um, uh,
I can trace how I became a podcaster to saying yes to one thing.
okay.
Literally. It's
Okay.
insanity. In 2014 October, I was watching The Houses That October Built, which is a found footage movie kind of like Hell House LLC, not in terms of longevity and quality. I think Hell House LLC is one of the best found footage movies made, period. But I was sitting and watching it, and I was availing myself that month to do a movie review every day for 31 days. And I was posting it on Facebook and writing about it. And a friend of mine from high school, who I was in band with, reached out to me and said publicly on Facebook, like, hey, man, have you thought about doing a podcast? I said, no, I had not, but I would love to. And then he left. And then I had somebody else. And then he left. And then I had somebody else. And then he left. And now it's just me with one, a new guest or a reoccurring guest every week. And if I have one guest once a week and I do that 4 times a month, I can essentially have guests the entire time.
Right.
So, but I said yes to someone else asking about podcasting that I wanted to do it too, and I'm here now.
Smart.
It's crazy. It's actually fucking insane. So that's why I say like I don't necessarily say yes all the time, but I rarely say no, and I will be willing to listen to most people, and I will engage with people that you probably wouldn't expect me to. As much as we were talking, earlier pre-recording about politics, I'm not the kind of person to tell someone unless you're like a complete raving lunatic. I'll have a conversation with someone who's pretty conservative. I'll have a conversation with someone who's pretty liberal too. I can have those conversations. It doesn't bother me. I know it
Yeah.
bothers other people
There,
immensely, even.
well, I mean, there's that guy, and I'm embarrassed I forgot his name. He's a hero of mine. I just can't think of it right now. But the guy that basically got to know, he's a black man in the South who got to know KKK members and like slowly just started converting them one by one
Right.
over the years, right? It's through conversation. It's not through like distance, right? Anyways,
No.
okay,
Proximity is something that's important. Like
yeah,
it's hard. I find it hard to be racist if you are someone who is not just around white people all the time. Cause like you would just see like everybody's like one another and there's no difference, motherfuckers. Like, come on. Like the
for sure.
differences exist because you literally haven't seen someone like that.
That's true. That's true. Um, Gonna take it in a slightly different direction because you have spent so much of your time in TV and discussing TV and movies.
Right.
So I'm curious for you, and I have an answer if you need a prompt, but I don't think you'll need a prompt. What makes a good movie for you? Like, what's something like across genre, across story style, like something where like it just like is like, okay, this is gonna be like a Chris movie or a Chris TV show, like something that speaks to you.
Oh, something that speaks to me specifically.
Yeah, yeah, like for you,
Okay.
like what makes it for you, like
So,
something
so,
that,
so I'll answer more generally, and then I'll answer more specifically for myself. So, in terms of what I think generally makes a good movie, is something interesting. On the show, we did star ratings for a while when the website was a thing, because I
hmm
was also running a website and a podcast network thing, podcasts and a website for a while, and the website's defunct because I couldn't do that by myself too. So for me, we never had star ratings and not taken seriously, anyways, but it would either be skip it or watch it, which for
okay,
me is more important. You could skip plenty of good movies because, like, it's just not going to resonate with somebody. Just skip it. Like, I don't need to see another movie of people being sad for an hour and a half. I'm not saying all dramas are like that, but a lot of them are. And
hmm
so it's like skip it or watch it was more important because I like to watch a lot of weird stuff that doesn't necessarily work, but I can find something of value in it. So for me, not specifically, but just generally, what do I think makes a good movie? Something that's interesting that people put some thought into, maybe not all of the thought. Maybe it's not the most well thought out thing, but I think Tommy Wiseau's The Room, which has now become like kind of a who cares anymore. It became so popular that it doesn't matter anymore. I think that movie is immensely watchable because it's the only thing
Yeah.
like that, for fuck's
Right.
sake. In a
Yeah.
world where everything is the same, things that are different intentionally or
Yep.
unintentionally are the most entertaining things to watch. Now,
Yeah.
for me specifically, couple things I would say. I think it has to be smartly written in terms of like the dialogue needs to be snappy. I think the writer needs to have, again, like references, maybe not super obvious, but a little wink and a nod, like an Edgar Wright. Like, I think Edgar Wright does it right, no pun intended, of introducing pop culture references into his movies, but not hanging a lantern on them, not
Yeah.
focusing on it. And I like someone who does that, who is smart, who references things that they love, like in Ari Aster with Midsummer, where
Uh-huh.
there's a scene in the movie that is a more or less, I would say, inspired by, but more or less the exact same thing that Michael Myers does in the first movie with tilting his head. And
Okay.
there's a mask on that looks like a Michael Myers mask, intentionally or unintentionally.
Nice.
And
Nice.
it's not like they then had him pin someone to the wall and do the head thing. It's just subtle enough. So that's the kind of stuff that I appreciate, is someone who has a unique style that you don't really get to see elsewhere. They have a unique voice that you don't get to see elsewhere. Sometimes they're working in the studio system, sometimes they're not. At this point, you can make weird movies in the studio system. You can make weird movies not. I mean, I think weird stuff comes out all the time. I'm into things that are just different and weird. If you were to ask me what my favorite movie is, and you were asking me in a group of people that watch movies but aren't
Mm-hmm.
sitting and going like, I watch movies all the time, I would say Goodfellas, and there would be enough people in the group to go, "Oh yeah, I've seen that movie. Yeah, it's great," and it is great. It's
Uh-huh.
amazing. It's one of the
Uh-huh.
best movies. It's the
Sure.
best movie.
Sure, sure.
But when if someone asks me, and I know that they have a deeper knowledge of film than just a base level one, I would say something along the lines of like Freaked, which is one of my favorite movies. And it's, I mean, it's madcap slapstick body horror nightmare made by Alex Winter that has Keanu Reeves and Randy Quaid in it. And it's, I mean, to say it is a practical effects smorgasbord is an understatement. And I love it, and it's one of my favorite movies, but I know that, most people out on the street haven't heard of it. So that's what makes a good movie for me, is something weird, different, and interesting. That could mean any number of things, but I really like things that are subversive, and I have no problem with something pushing the boundaries and the envelope. Like, I have seen a Serbian film. I have seen plenty of those kinds of. We did an episode on a Serbian film for the show. We did an episode on Necromantic. Not
Uh-huh.
movies that are necessarily moving the needle in any way, at least in terms of mainstream audiences. But that's the thing I've always tried to bring to the stuff I work on, is I don't want to be part of the mainstream. And if that means it makes doing this a little harder, I can I can work a little harder to make sure that I'm doing this the way I want to do it, which is being true to myself.
Going back to the legacy thing, you never know when something's gonna pop either too. And
Oh
so it's like
yeah.
it's just so hard to know, right? Like you could record an episode about something obscure and then the director freak happens to get a script and
Right.
rent them things through the studio system and is getting Academy Awards and all of a sudden now their whole filmography is of interest, right?
Right.
It's so hard to know. That's one thing that's been interesting to me is watch these filmmakers like Scorsese who's making great movies when he's 150 years old.
Right.
It's just like, oh man, that dude should have been stopping like a long time ago. But
Right.
um anyways.
And he's a guy who's never even said he's going to retire, unlike so many other directors who are so
Yeah.
self-important that they think all of us care if you retire. I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but like, it's great. It's great, but when I retire, I'm not going to sing it from the heavens and go do my fucking publicity tour.
Well, you'll have 18 platforms to announce it on.
Yeah, and that's all I'm gonna be like, and I'm done. I'm not gonna go and again, I mean, I get it. Like, oh, Tarantino said I was gonna make this movie, and now I'm okay, fine. And one day David Fincher will just stop making movies and we'll never hear about it. It won't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, that's the way this should be. Like, and one day the content just stops. I
Yeah.
don't, this isn't sports. Martin Scorsese's making movies into his fucking 2000s. Like you said, Tarantino, I'm stopping now in my early 50s or 60 or whatever the fuck it is. Like, I just want to be bothered. Like, get the fuck out of here. How many times has Soderbergh said he was going to retire at this point? He's made more movies than he said he was going to retire. Has he made
Yeah,
more movies since he said he was going to retire than before? That's the real question.
I'm sure, especially the first time.
Yeah, which was like what, 2003?
I think
I'm
so.
done with making film. Fuck the advances of the next 50 years of my life that could drastically change my interest in making film. Can you imagine that shit? Being
It's like
so full of it to be like, I don't want to make film anymore. Like,
it's like my 4-year-old retiring from basketball.
yeah, it's like I'm done. I've gotten to the mountaintop. Like, what are you talking
That's funny.
about?
Um, yeah, that's really funny. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of bases. I think this has been in my mind, this has been a very good introduction to you, both in the what you've said, but also I think the way you say it. One thing I've enjoyed when we spoke on the episode of Film Foundations, which will be coming to theaters near you some point in 2024.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I mentioned, we don't do things anymore around these parts without banking a bunch of
yeah,
episodes.
yeah, 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 yeah. Uh,
25 recordings in a month is a lot. I
that's
love it,
amazing.
but it is a lot. I
That's a
always think
lot.
about people that do a monthly show and that's all they do. They do a monthly 12 times a year. Not to say wow, but
It's
wow.
glorious. It's
Yeah,
glorious.
what
Yeah.
is that like? What is I want to know what it's like to be the person that has never had to edit a podcast. Like the forever, like the not the forever guest, but like the forever co-host, the person who's just like, I don't do anything other than show up. It's like, what's that like? Is that fun? Is that a fun job?
You get to be the talent.
Yeah, I'm the
Um,
talent and only the talent.
um, but I think this is a good introduction to you. I think what I hope comes across to people listening is that you are fully yourself, and the self that you are has built this really strong network with a lot of interesting content and a lot of, I was listening to the first 3 episodes of Film Foundations, and the thing that struck me is even though you mentioned this is kind of a work for you at some point, the passion you have for movie definitely comes through in when you talk about film. I think I was just finishing the Scream series, and I shouldn't say this because you might hang up and tell me I can't release this, but I'm very mediocre on the Scream franchise.
I mean, I get it. So that's the thing, man. Like, that's the other thing. And I really internalize this comment, and I don't know who left it for me on iTunes. But if you listen to my show and you leave a comment or a review, please do it on iTunes and rate the show on iTunes and rate this show on iTunes and rate all the shows you listen to on iTunes because that's where it matters most. Free for anybody listening. Um, Someone wrote in a review, I don't remember exactly what they said to start, but they were like, when I first listened to the Kulturecast, Chris sounded like every other intellectual bully I had known my entire life.
Uh,
And then the next sentence was, but then, and I forget what it was, but then, I was listening and that's not the case. And it's like, okay, good. I am mindful of that because and I know plenty of us have had conversations with people where we are dismissed out of hand and nobody likes that. Nobody wants that. And
well,
that's not
that's
fair or okay. And
exactly.
I'm not willing to do that, and other people not being willing to do that is important because I will fully cop to, there was a time in my life where someone said, "Oh, I love Michael Bay movies." And I'm like, "Yeah, you fucking suck." And fucking Michael Bay movies fucking suck. Now I'm like, I couldn't be bothered to care really if Michael Bay movies suck or not. But you know what? If people can take 2 hours and forget how shitty everything is for two
Yeah,
hours, good. Michael Bay provides
exactly.
that. Look, and I'm a late bloomer, but I finally came around on Armageddon. I mean, it's a fun movie. It takes itself way too seriously, but it's a fun movie. But my
Yeah.
point being in all of this is it's hard here to do something. I don't know. It's very hard to this is a balancing act is what this feels like. Cause
Yes.
like I've said, I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I want to keep the gate open, but I want to still have my opinion on things, which can feel like gatekeeping.
Well, I mean,
To people
I
that
think
don't know me, it can kind of feel like gatekeeping.
maybe the thing that jumped out. I need to listen to more of you, I guess. But the thing that jumped out to me about Scream was just the passion, and like I think for me that it got me excited about the franchise because, like when I talk about, have you ever seen a movie called Action USA?
Mm.
Okay, fix that if you can for what it's worth. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's a career stuntman who got who knows why, but he got budget to make a movie, and it's like a vanity project where instead of the star being the vanity, it's like the stunts are the vanity.
Nice.
and it's just a series of stunts and dialogue that was written probably the day of shooting. And it's just phenomenal. It's 1989 Action USA. But when I defend that movie, I want to be able to talk about that in the same sentence as I talk about Fellini's Eight and a Half.
Right. Of
Because at
course.
the end of the day, like both those movies hit me at an emotional level. And that's why I like them. I don't care about who Fellini is. I don't study him. But Eight and a Half hit me, and
Right.
Action USA hit me, and Ricky O hit me. And like
Oh, now
I'll
you're speaking my language.
yes.
Ricky, you
And
are our hopes and you are our dreams.
and like those movies should be celebrated. So, anyways, even though I'm not a massive fan of Scream, I like the passion, and it makes me, like it makes me want to listen to you more because, like, okay, I'm gonna get, somebody who loves movies.
Yeah, I am so glad to hear that that comes across, that I am not speaking down to people about movies, but more just trying to be a good representative of bringing more people into the fold because now more than ever, we need entertainment and we need all different kinds of entertainment. And I think fostering a healthy relationship with creative communities is a good way of making good content because
Right.
some of the best shows that I've recorded, yes, I was there, but they were good because of the other people that I worked with. It's not, this is a collaborative thing. This is a collaboration and a community, both within the podcasters themselves and then with, you know, the parasocial relationships that we're all creating with the people that listen to our stuff. So it's, again, it's a balancing act. It's really, really hard to not sound like a bully, but at the same time speak knowledgeably about things.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm not saying, oh, poor me. I'm just saying you have to understand not everybody can do this. And there's a reason for that. Just like not everybody can fucking fly a Boeing 737. Some people don't want to, and some people literally can't. Some people are literally incapable of getting out of their own way to be entertaining or funny. I've met them. You probably know people like that. So
right.
do I. And I'm not
Right.
saying being funny is entertaining, but in terms of like, let's just be honest here, the lowest form of entertainment is comedy because it's a thing that theoretically any one of us could do. Really, like playing sports requires
Right.
physical, there are things that require things that some people literally can't do, but for the most part, people can do a form of comedy even if they're unable to do certain things. Even
Mm.
comedy is universal. And so, yeah, I don't know. You don't have to be funny, but entertaining and funny, that's an easy way to get in. Like I said, that's the easiest way I have found. Just be funny.
Just be funny.
Make them laugh. Make them laugh. Hey, I hadn't seen that movie until earlier this year. You know how many movie podcasters would openly admit they hadn't seen Singing in the Rain till they were in their 30s? That's the
That
kind of gatekeeping I fucking hate.
were you was that the Heather Drain episode where you no, you were no, what's the episode you did with the 80s TV ladies? What was that?
Singing in the Rain.
Oh, it was just talking about singing in the
We did
rain.
an episode on Singing
So
in the Rain because I'd never
so
seen it.
okay, so that's what it was. So I was listening to some of Culturecast. That's a great episode.
Thank you. I think it's
Um
one of the better episodes I've done, to be honest with you. Susan and Sharon are their show is amazing, and getting to work with them is a joy. And I will tell you the other thing. I honestly I consider myself grateful to work with any of the people that I work with because they get anyone giving me any amount of their time. That's more important than money at this point because you can make more money. You cannot make more time. And if you
mhm.
can, please tell me how because I've been trying to figure out for a very long time.
Right, exactly. Well, Chris, I think that's a great place to stop, other than to say, where is the ideal place people find you? You just mentioned iTunes.
Yeah, so weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can go to check out where our shows are hosted by Spreaker. And that is essentially the inventory or catalog of the shows that are available right now. And you can listen to them on Spreaker. However, best to just go onto whatever app you use and download it there. But where you can leave a review and engage with the algorithm for our
Uh,
benefit and for your benefit is on iTunes.
okay.
Um, that's the best place I think for any, but like I said before, anybody's show that you listen to, go like and rate it on iTunes because that honestly helps them and them being me and you and other content creators. And the show that again I am the most proud of is the Culture Cast because I've been doing it for so long. I've been consistent pretty much every week since
Yeah.
October of 2014, which is
Amazing.
it's fucking insane. I mean, I haven't
That
done
is
anything
insane.
else in my entire life for 10 years of consistency. Well, that's not true, but I can't mention it in polite company in podcasting. Um, but it's again, it's mind blowing to me. But if you want to hear any of the 653, soon to be 655 or six episodes of the Culture Cast, weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can go to do that.
Beautiful. Um, Thank you for almost an hour and a half tonight. Thank you so
Could have
much.
kept going. I mean,
Easily.
like I said, huh? Huh? Yeah, that's what it feels like sometimes. No caffeine, and you could still make it happen. So,
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much, and we'll see you many places online.
yeah, thank you.